The mandible. The mandible is also known as the lower jaw. It's got a lot of unique characteristics because it can move up and down, and it can move side to side. It's the only bone of the skull that is movable. It's also the strongest bone of the face. It's attached to the rest of the face by two joints called temporomandibular joints, or TMJ, right in here. It's one bone, but it consists of three parts. The body, which is horizontal in nature and includes the alveolar process where the teeth are located, and two vertical portions called the rami. A singular is a ramus. There's a left and a right, and they're referred to as the ascending rami because they are vertical. They go upwards. The angle of the mandible is the area where the ramus or rami unite with the body of the mandible. You can feel that by running your hand or your finger sort of along the bottom of the mandible, and you'll feel sort of a corner, and then it will start to go up the ramus. The top of each ramus consists of two different processes, which are projections of the bone. The conoid process is on the anterior segment. It's flat and pointed. And the condylar process is on the posterior segment, and it's sort of a round knob. It's sometimes called just the condyle, and it is actually this whole neck and the knob area. So it's the condylar process or the condyle. Between these two processes is a curve that's called the sigmoid notch or the mandibular notch. There's the mental protuberance on the mandible. Now, the word mental sometimes can confuse people. It does not refer to your brain power or brain capacity or anything. In this case, when we're talking about anatomy, we're talking about mentalis, or the chin area. So when we talk about something being mental, in this case, when you're talking about the bones of the face, you're talking about the chin area. The body of the mandible starts out as two bones, two separate bones actually, but they fuse together in early childhood, so they harden into one bone. And the area where they fuse together is called the median line, and it's a thicker area. That's the chin or the mentalis area. And it sort of protrudes a little bit. It's thicker, that area. So it's the symphysis or the mental protuberance. There's an oblique line that runs up that is on the outside and the inside of the mandible body. Oblique means the line isn't clearly vertical or horizontal, it's sort of slanted. This line creates a ridge that extends backward and upward from the mental protuberance all the way up, and then it continues along the anterior border of the ramus. The external oblique line, this one shows up on periapical and panorex x-rays of the posterior regions of the mouth. There is also an interior oblique line that you cannot see here, but there's also another one on the inside. The incisive fossa is a hollow or depressed area that's found on either side of the symphysis. So if this is the symphysis and it's raised, then on either side it's sort of hollowed down, and that's the incisive fossa. There are three processes of the mandible. There's the conoid process here, the condylar process, and then the alveolar process. There's also the retromolar triangle, which is the area that's immediately behind the wisdom teeth or third molars. It's significant to making dentures. You want to be sure that that area is captured in an impression and on the model that you're making the dentures. It's sometimes also called the retromolar pad. The alveolar process is the superior border here. It contains the alveoli or sockets for the teeth in this trabecular bone area. The process itself is made up of two compact bony plates. You've got the external plate and the internal plate. So it's sort of a shell on the outside, and then the inside bone is a little bit more airy and honeycombed, and within that are actually sockets or holes that the teeth plug into, essentially. A foramen is an opening through the bone, and there are two significant sets of foramen on the mandible. The mental foramina are located towards the chin, towards the mentalis area. They're located just below the second premolar. And blood vessels for the lip and the chin enter here. There's a right one and a left one. The mandibular foramina are located on the lingual surface in the middle of the ramus, and the nerves for the lower teeth and the lower lip enter here. Right, so here's the mandibular foramen on the ramus, and here's the mental foramen. We also have the angle of the mandible here, which in this particular slide is called the gonial angle. It's also the angle of the ramus. Condyle, Hyoid Process, and the mandibular notch. The mylohyoid groove, line or groove, is an attachment for the mylohyoid muscle. It's located on the lingual side of the mandible, and in front of it goes right down right in front of the mandibular foramen and down. It's another one of those slanted grooves, and runs forward and down from here. Above it is a sublingual fossa, or sort of a dip in the bone, and that holds the salivary gland, the sublingual salivary gland. Below that line or groove is the submandibular fossa, and that holds the salivary gland, the submandibular salivary glands. The hyoid bone is another bone that's in conjunction with the mandible. It's U-shaped. It's suspended between the larynx and the mandible, and it provides support for the tongue and other muscles that are attached to it. The hyoid bone can be felt by pressing one's finger into the crease where the chin becomes the neck. It's not really attached to anything. It's all by itself there, except for the fact that it has muscles attached that are supporting it and holding it in place.